Well, welcome everyone. Welcome back and welcome to your next codon ring. And the next codon ring is the ring of alchemy. The ring of alchemy consists of 4 gene keys. They are 6, 40, 47, and 64. And the entire ring of alchemy, all 4 of these gene keys will be running through the entire end of August through most of September. And I believe it starts August 29th with gene key 40 and ends around September 20th with gene key 6. So it goes this month, the order is 40, 64, 47, and 6. And I'll put the dates at the bottom of the video. So what is the Hebrew letter that houses this ring of alchemy? It is the second Hebrew letter, also known as Bet, and I will show you an image of it. I don't have much to say about the image, but I'll show you anyway. And here you can see Bet, I'm hoping. It looks like Beth, but we say Bet or Bait. I think it's more Bet. So I have nothing to say on the image itself, so we'll just continue on. Let me put down some of these images. And so, Bet, second Hebrew letter, represents or is known as the house of God, also known as tent of God, but I think they more use house of God. Bet is known as the great mother goddess, Shekinah, the Holy Spirit, Divine Mother, Kundalini Shakti, Divine Mother Shakti. This number 2, Bet, is the essence behind all things in the physical world. And she is the feminine aspect of Aleph, number 1, the great wind. So she is the feminine aspect of the great wind. She is also known as, her service is that she is the vehicle through which the great wind, number 1, speaks. And this house that we're referring to is, of course, our feelings, out of which all creativity emerges, all of nature, everything in the physical world that is manifested comes from a feeling, from feelings. She also represents the house that she represents is, of course, our physical body, our souls, and our hearts. Bet also represents the union or yoga of God in man. And this union, of course, represents or is a set of 2, God and man, God in man. And so what is Bet? Bet also represents, or the number 2 represents, duality. And that's what this whole ring of alchemy is all about, is duality. And of course, physical life here in this 3rd dimension is all about duality. We have dual experiences in everything we do. So this duality represents 2 things that are inextricably, that's a difficult word to say, related. So they're inseparable. We have the positive pole or force and the negative force of each of these items. And of course, you can't have 2 without the 2 becoming 3. And that 3rd element is the relationship between the 2. And it is the healing of these 2 opposites, not opposites, say counter forces, that creates the impetus for change. So duality, number 2, begets alchemy, transformation. And that, of course, is where the ring of alchemy all fits in. It is the healing or the transformation, transfiguration of these 2 seemingly opposites that creates the 3rd element. Okay, I think that's just beautiful. So what else can we say about Bet? Bet being the Divine Mother Shakti. Shakti, or also called Kundalini Shakti, but when you use the word Shakti at the end, Shakti represents the unified version of this essence that is underlying all things in physical form. When we say Kundalini, Kundalini itself, without Shakti at the end, just Kundalini represents or is the individualized and restricted form or aspect of Mother Shakti. Okay. And so being in this, so as Kundalini is in the physical form, in a physical realm, in her energetic presence, she also has a counterpole or a negative pole. Let's just say a counterpole. And that pole, someone reminded me of this the other day. I'd totally forgotten about this. So thank you. That pole is called Kunda buffer. And Kunda buffer is that which keeps you asleep. It is your animal nature, your animal drives, ego desires, basically all the ego. And Kunda buffer, I mean, it tells you what it's the buffer of Kundalini. Kunda buffer is the descending or veiling aspect of Kundalini, which is the ascending aspect. Okay. What else do I want to tell you about that? Let's see here. Just as an aside, talking about Kundalini, the word itself, just to give you a little bit more context. So the Kundalini means the coiled one, but if you break it down, some of its roots will give you a fuller meaning of what Kundalini really is, and this Kunda buffer. So the root Kunda can mean bowl, but literal meaning, it means a pit or a bowl or a place to burn your trash, to store your trash. Then we have another root, Kundala, means unending spiral or unending fractal. And then we have another root of Kundalini is Kundalin, which means serpent, poisonous serpent. So Kundalini, as I've been talking about, and many people talk about it, it's this great mother goddess, sounds all warm and fuzzy and wants to do good things for you. But it also, it is also a place, it's not all warm and fuzzy. Kundalini can be a place or the essence, the element that's within us that is keeping us asleep, stores all of our trash, and can keep us in a never-ending spiral of our own karmic destiny, keep us on this wheel of reincarnation. If she can, God willing, when our will wakes up and we begin to become conscious, then she becomes the light at the end of the tunnel, and she starts ascending us upwards. But she can keep us on the descending aspect through that Kunda buffer, keeping Kundalini asleep. So just sharing that with you. So enough of that. Bet, or number 2, representing the cosmic mother, she represents this duality of cosmic truth. And here's what she has to say. She says, for any exaltation, there must be a humiliation. And what this implies is that we have to descend downwards first in order to ascend upwards, in order to receive the blessings of God, to move towards God. We have to humble ourselves, lower ourselves in order to receive. So it is showing you that in this world, it is going to be a constant, until a certain point, a constant cycle of opposites, or let's just say contraction and expansion. And we forget that. I know I forget this so much, but we have to remember that for every awakening and good thing that happens, a negative force is also going to come to come to fruition. So we have to remember, we can have great expansion, spiritual expansion, but then we're going to have a contraction. It's because we're in this bet is going to create this constant need, constant cycle of alchemy, so that eventually we get to a point. I think I was going to talk about this later, but I'll just say it now. We get to a point where there's been enough alchemy within the system, and Kundalini, the individualized version of Mother Shakti, burns itself up. It reaches its destination to the Bindu point, and it reaches its unified level. And at that point, Kundalini is done. It's gone. Kunda buffer no longer exists. And what you're emanating is now pure Shakti, pure beingness. So, because you're now living in oneness. So you're expressing Shakti, no longer Kundalini. May have not said that all perfectly, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So let's move on and continue talking about bet, or number 2. What else do I want to say? Let's see. I've got my notes here, and I've kind of lost my place, so bear with me. Oh yes, I just wanted to mention the metaphor of this house, of course, that we have to keep our house clean. Most of us have very dirty houses, and it is our job through this ring of alchemy to purify our home for which God can live. And of course, the real temple, of course, it's our bodies. We have to keep our bodies clean, but the real temple, or the house of God, that this number is referring to, is our hearts. When our hearts are purified, the Divine Mother will arrive. And of course, the Divine Mother is, like I said, all about duality. She too has a partner in crime. And mythologically speaking, she must face her own Medusa, like we all do. And this Medusa represents all the different eyes, the Medusa with all the snakes in her head. These are all the different eyes that we create for ourselves. The ego creates all these different eyes for us. And so the Divine Mother, Bet, must become a warrior. So too must you become a warrior. Bet, you have to remember, like Kundalini and Kundalini Shakti is not all warm and fuzzy. She must be a warrior for God. And this number 2 is fierce. And she is fierce because she uses the tools of fire. And the tools of fire are meditation and self-reflection. And of course, what is fire? It is the source of all alchemy. Therefore, creating, once again, this ring of alchemy that we're in. So you can see how the two are definitely connected. And this ring of alchemy that we're going to talk about next is the Battle of Polarities. It is male versus female, mind versus inner truth, ego versus divine will, and identification with imagination or freedom. And those make up the 4 gene keys that are in this ring of alchemy. So I'll just talk a little bit about each of these gene keys, just very briefly, about the alchemy that's going to happen. So gene key 6 is battle of the sexes, right? And it's also the battle of our unconscious, out of control emotions versus having conscious self-awareness of our emotions, particularly in relationship to the opposite sex or in relationships in general. This Hebrew number 2 is also called, or has the saying connected with it, it's called foolishness to wisdom. And it's like a trial through error. But we are fools when we are unconscious and our emotions are out of control. So it's, you learn through trial and error. You make mistakes, alchemy happens, and then you have wisdom. Foolishness to wisdom. So gene key 6 is the alchemy of bringing consciousness and self-reflection to our unconscious emotions. And the alchemy happens when we find that place of neutrality between the two opposing forces, and we find that place of peace. That's the third element. And so I would say that gene key 6 represents the alchemy of our emotional body and alchemy of relationships. Gene key 40, battle of the wills, dun, dun, dun. Ego will versus divine will. And this battle is either going to create exhaustion or enthusiasm, fatigue, or having lots of energy. And this gene key, as you know, is all about doing less. This is, for me, the alchemy of the physical body, knowing when to say yes, knowing when to say no, learning to give the body time to rest, not just sleeping, but total relaxation of not just your physical body, but every one of your subtle bodies, letting go of the mind, letting go of the emotions, and just totally letting go, total relaxation, until you finally realize there is absolutely nothing to do and nowhere to go, okay? And this total relaxation can really only happen in your own aloneness, without any distraction, turning off the television, turning off sound, and sitting and turning within and being with yourself, inner self, sitting in your own aloneness and totally letting go with total acceptance and just being. So to me, this is alchemy of the body. Gene key 47. For me, this is a battle of our Akash, or our soul imprinted fears, perhaps even our instinctual body. This is the field of our fears, all of those fears, crazy fears, scary place to be. So this is, we come into this world and then we are conditioned in this world that we view and listen to the world through our own preset or conditioned, and then also pre-incarnated agendas. So we look at the world and view our world through our own preconditioned and pre-incarnated agendas, easy for me to say. Thus, we only hear what we want to hear. And while we're doing that, we're carefully editing out anything that challenges us or anything that might make us look into our own fears. So this creates an unending spiral. Remember that unending spiral of the Kunda? Spiral of karma. So this is, to me, the alchemy of the etheric body or the soul body. The alchemy comes when we stop running from all of these pre-incarnated and preconditioned fears. We learn to accept them, look at them, surrender into them, let them eat you up, and then the oppression from these fears stops oppressing you. So to me, this is the alchemy of the Akash, because at some point when you release these fears, because at the basis of everything else, all the shadow stuff is fear, 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 fear. And once you've cleansed your etheric body, soul body of that, then we can get off the wheel of incarnation. And then finally, we have gene key 64, battle of the mind versus inner truth, which is the shadow of confusion. This is where the mind identifies with everything it sees suffering, it becomes suffering. And this then generates our attitude or posturing towards life or whatever particular situation. And when the mind is in suffering or pain, it tends to collapse into this place of confusion, particularly when there's physical pain. And we all have known this. we feel physical pain, and this mind begins to collapse, and it's confused. I don't know how to get out of it. And you get into this spiral. And this is the gene key that says we must stop thinking. This is the other tool of fire, where we have to go into meditation, bring our awareness out of the mind and into the body, so that we can feel our way out of this confusion and never-ending spiral, this battle of the mind versus inner truth, which is our true feelings, our true knowing. So to me, this is alchemy of the mental body. So enough of the gene keys. Let's just talk about the number 2 in general, this beautiful number 2, how this divine mother would be at her best or at her worst, this divine diva. And also sharing these qualities will help give you clues as to when this ring of alchemy might be working in your life. So pay attention. So at her highest level, this beautiful number 2, Bet, represents unconditional love and understanding. And she also represents wisdom. Her archetype is the divine helper, the divine altruist. Her purpose is unity, or at a lower level, closeness, oneness with the other. It's a union of opposites, or union with the other person, another in relationship with another person. Her virtue is humility, and her expressions are grace, love, joy, unselfishness, purity of heart, healing, emotional awareness, open-mindedness. She enjoys blissful solitude, so her aloneness is her great respite. She is compassionate, caring, concerned, serving. She can, however, all these nice words, don't let this fool you. This divine mother too can enact really tough love when is necessary. So she can be really tough, but it is a graceful, tough love. So she's also grace. I think I've said that before. She is responsive, and she also has very good boundaries, knows when to say yes and knows when to say no. Okay, at her diva fearful level, this is like the mother-in-law level. I say that kindly. She is afraid. Her fear is that there is no love, that there is no love for herself, that life is loveless, that her life will be loveless, that there is no love for her. And this creates, she becomes prideful, and then she can become people-pleasing, flattering to others, trying to get others close to her, very effusive. Oh, aren't you wonderful? Everything's, trying to get people to come close to establish a relationship. At lower levels, it can be the intrusive helper. We all know somebody who's like that. This intrusive helper or person is always looking for openings to kind of get in, to get inside you, get next to you, get close to you. And there's always an ulterior motive for her helping you when she's functioning in the fear state. Always looking to get close, always looking for getting attention. There's a level of self-importance, like the martyr type. At the lower level, she can be quite sanctimonious, guilt instilling, smothering, histrionic, vengeful, and bitter. So sick at the heart, and ultimately very parasitic. So this number 2, as lovely as she is, can be very, very awful, very, very diva-like. And finally, the major arcana that is connected to the number 2 is the High Priestess. Now I know that some have the Magician, but the priest and priestess is also known as a magician. So she is, I related the high priestess to a number 2. The planet that is connected to this is the moon. And this number 2 is a product of the second ray of creation, which is love, wisdom, and illumination. Number 2 is a beautiful number. Bet is a beautiful, beautiful number, and I hope you've enjoyed that. So the question is, will you be the divine mother or the divine diva mother-in-law? So let's all wish each other good luck during this month of divine ring of alchemy and fire, and use your tools, meditation and self-reflection.